Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. If you're new here, my name is Christina. If you're not new here, hi, welcome back. It's great to see you. This is a reading for Gemini sun signs, or if you have significant Gemini placements in your chart and are needing a masculine energy to work with or balance within yourself, or if you're just feeling called to this reading for whatever reason, then there may be a message in here for you. So Gemini, let's get started. There's a lot of interesting downloads that I was getting before this reading. I'm not exactly sure how it relates to this, but we'll see as I go through the cards. But anyway, so we'll start at the bottom of the deck. I'm using 3 different decks today. It's a lot, but these are the bottom of the deck for all 3 of the decks. So we have the Heartbroken card, Portal for the Heartbroken, the Depth Lake, and the Wheel of Fortune, which is such an interesting energy. This Wheel of Fortune, to me, it's been talking about time in general, where there's kind of perhaps I don't want to say history's repeating, because there are aspects of that, but also thinking about time as being a pattern that never repeats. Right? If you think about the number pi is an irrational number that has absolutely an established pattern, but it never repeats, right? So I feel like that's what this is talking about. You may be seeing something where it's perhaps there's something similar coming back around, or there's something that's it feels like it's returning, or a specific event or something in your life. You may be even getting hints of it because it's kind of feeling like a retrograde, but it's new, if that makes sense. Normally how I experience retrograde energies is that old situations will come back around so that you can get a new perspective on it. So it's kind of something like that. And especially because it has to do with this heartbreak energy, which is really interesting. This is never mind. I'm not gonna get into that. Anyways, so, sorry, there's just so much information. Okay, so this Wheel of Fortune, I feel like because the heart here is highlighted in this card, and with the heartbroken, there's some sort of past heartbreak energy that's I want to say coming back around, but in order for you to get a new perspective on it, perhaps, or to heal it, or you're getting a piece of your heart back, is kind of how it's coming through today. And with the Lake Depth, because this card to me, it's either kind of she's going down into the depths, or she's rising back up. For you, it feels kind of like a combination, because you do have this water card that's coming out in the actual spread that we'll get to, where this one always talks to me about something rising from the depths, right? So it could be something especially with this lake card, I sometimes see this as being sort of an overwhelm or moon energy, just because of another card in a different deck. So it could be something a feeling overwhelmed by perhaps emotions, or subconscious energies, or moon energies in general. But it's there's some form of perhaps clarity, or retrieving something from the bottom is kind of how it's coming through. So that's the overall context. And then we have, to start off the reading, we have this inner core solidity, which I love so much. It's coming through as clarity. Okay, sorry, Gemini. So this inner core solidity card is the first card in your spread today. So this card talks to me about clarity. I feel or hope even. I feel there's a lot of that energy as well. It's kind of what's coming through is maybe you're having a conversation with somebody, and it's there's perhaps they say something to you that kind of clicks something in, is kind of what's coming through. It gives you a new perspective, perhaps on yourself or on your past, right? There, because it's kind of as I was talking about this heartbreak card, it was looking like these two energies, right? It's because this heartbreak sometimes seems like a splitting apart, whereas this inner core solidity to me, I feel like there may be actually something where like something really solid in your life is changing, is kind of how that's feeling to me, because underneath that you have underneath this inner core solidity. So it could be something like you're having a conversation with a friend and then you have like an epiphany or something like that. And it changes some aspect of something that's very solid in your life, because what you have underneath here, sorry, is the tree card. So it was talking a lot about like roots and foundation, which is sort of all representing solidity, right? Like things that are very solid in your life and very stable. But it's coming in with the number 5 here. And the other cards to come out after this are Portal for the Darkness and the Wind card, right? So it's kind of looking like this tree is losing all of its leaves, right? It's kind of like there's some sort of change with the 5 and the wind, right? There's some sort of change happening, especially with this card. Something that's perhaps like dissolving, or in some way like something that's solid is perhaps changing because of this epiphany or this clarity that's coming in. And it's kind of like what's happening now is kind of like the portal for the darkness, which is kind of saying that I feel like you, Gemini, are being called to go to a particular place that is unknown to you, is kind of how it's feeling. To me, the darkness just represents like you can't see past a certain point, or there's not a lot of clarity, or something that's just unknown, right? And there is a little bit of fear that may be associated with this card because you're stepping into something unknown, perhaps. But then you have here these 2 cards. So the Star, right? This is absolutely your energy today, Gemini. The Star, which is talking about a wish, right? Or having a wish fulfilled, because I feel like on some level, maybe you have been asking for this change because of the Wheel of Fortune, right? It's like there's something new coming, but it would require you to take a step out of your comfort zone. I always see that with this card for some reason. It's kind of like she's... because of the cards that are coming out next, right? It's like you have here the 9 of Swords, the 9 of Swords and the Queen of Wands, right? Because it's kind of like this one here, this Queen of Wands, this could be a friend energy. I normally see this as sort of like a beacon, or like somebody who leads the way, is kind of how that's feeling, right? It's like perhaps there's somebody here that you're maybe trying to go towards or something like that. And it's kind of like, but it's like in order to get to them, you would have to step into the darkness or into the unknown, is kind of how that's coming through. And it's kind of like it is calling you, but there's a lot of this sort of like the 9 of Swords energy, which to me always talks about fear of being seen, or there's like it's really interesting, this card. I feel like this combination of cards has come out in a different reading. If I remember what it is, I'll link it above because it might be relevant to you. I feel like it was a Cancer reading, but I can't quite remember. But this combination of cards is really interesting because it's kind of like especially with the Star, right? Because it's kind of like you're stepping into the darkness, but you yourself also have some sort of like light to give, right? It's kind of like you have a flashlight. So it's kind of like if you go into the darkness or into this unknown space, you would now be somebody who's also guiding, or right? That's kind of like what I'm seeing here. It's that you would be sort of holding the flashlight for others, right? And there's kind of like like everyone has their eyes on you, or everyone is looking to you perhaps to provide some sort of guidance or leadership, or whatever that is. And perhaps that might be sort of like the holdup or the anxiety as well with the 9 of Swords, right? There may be kind of like a discomfort about that, which is really interesting. But I feel like, so in this process though, it's kind of like it feels like you are desiring to go in this direction, even though it causes anxiety, is kind of what's coming through. And so in order to perhaps clear that or make it a bit more, make the transition a bit easier, because you do have the Death card coming out next, which is kind of like the transition, the change that's absolutely happening. But to me, this talks about sort of like peaceful acceptance. So there could be like there may be sort of an energy that's helping you to peacefully accept the change that is happening, is kind of what's coming through. With this Water card, again, I see this as being sort of like either retrieving something from deep in your subconscious, right? You could be like experiencing memories of the past, perhaps surrounding like a specific heartbreak that might be kind of, I want to say it's like getting in the way of something, or it's just like it's like you need to deal with this energy in order to clear up whatever it is that needs to be cleared, is kind of how it's coming through. So what came out after this Water creation card is the Adventure South, right? And then you have these two cards underneath that, the Mountain and the Time Traveler. So whenever this Time Traveler card comes out, right, it's absolutely tied to the Wheel of Fortune. It's like sometimes you need to go backwards in order to actually move forward. I say this so much during Mercury retrograde, where it's like maybe you forgot something at home, metaphorically, right? It's like you have to go back for something in order to continue on your journey, because it's like that thing that you forgot is what's needed. So there could be something like that, especially because this Adventure South card is coming up, because the South to me represents like the South Node, right? Like our past lives, the things that we've already mastered, and that we can use in order to move forward, right? But it's like, it's important not to get stuck in the past. There's something here about that. I feel like that's not really a risk for you, Gemini, I hope, but it's kind of like what's coming out next. So it's like you may be journeying to the past. I'm getting kind of like a high school energy, so maybe like something like from high school. That's sort of what was coming through here. There was this I'm not sure whether or not to share this or not, but the story, the example that I was getting beforehand, before I pulled the cards, and I'm not exactly sure how this relates to the story, but maybe in the cards coming up. So anyways, the next card here is the Three of Swords, and I feel like there's something here about that. So of course this is the heartbreak energy, right? So it could be something that happened to you perhaps when you were younger. It doesn't have to be high school. That's just the example that was coming through. You might be like thinking about that, or just like re-experiencing it, or even like it may be coming back around, like a certain situation may be happening to you that has like a similar feel to that story from the past. But of course there are different characters or different circumstances or whatever. And then you have the Ace of Swords coming out right after that, right? It's like all of these truths perhaps are hitting a certain mark, right? And so it could be something like maybe you're being triggered by something, and it's like, or by multiple things perhaps, and it's all of those instances are exactly pinpointing a particular perhaps wounding or truth about yourself, right? So it could be something like that, but it's like, I feel like once you figure out what that is, it brings so much clarity. Okay, so this is the story that came through for me personally, just to explain an example of how this might play out for you, is that when I was in high school, this is like grade 9, like freshman year, there was a situation where I had, like, we were studying for an exam, and I had written notes for myself, right? So I created study notes for myself. They were really well done, if I can do my own horn there for a second. But it's kind of like, there was a situation where I had given these notes to a friend of mine, right? So she saw me studying from it and she thought they were great and that they could help her. And so I said, of course, I will give you a copy of these notes so that you can study. And then later on in the day, I overheard a conversation of somebody else that I didn't know very well who had gotten a copy of my notes. Like I hadn't given it to them. And so of course there was like this, it wasn't necessarily that that person had gotten my notes, right? That wasn't the issue for me, because of course I was really upset about that. For this reason specifically, the Ace of Swords. The reason why I was upset about it was because the conversation that this essentially stranger was having with his friend had asked him like, oh, where did you get those notes? And his response was, oh, just some girl in a different class, right? It wasn't the fact that he had the notes that made me upset. It was the issue that there was no acknowledgement of where the work had come from. There was no credit given to the person who had created the notes or person who had done all the work, right? It was kind of just like, oh, just some girl, right? Like some girl in a different class. There was no acknowledgement. And that's sort of something that was really quite upsetting to me at that age, I feel like. So anyways, for you, Gemini, there may be something about that where it's like you're revisiting a past experience because in some way there may be sort of a parallel between that past experience and perhaps something that you're experiencing now is kind of how it's coming through. So it's kind of like, I'm not sure exactly where that's going though, because it's kind of like, I feel like there's something about that story or like this past energy that you're revisiting where it's trying to remind you of your power or something like that, because you have here the Volcano Power card and Light Giver, right? So it's kind of like there's something here about that in you stepping into this darkness or in you stepping into this unknown energy, there's something here about your light or your power or your gifts or something that you are capable of creating, perhaps, that is wanting to be returned to you. Because it's kind of like perhaps in the past, when you have tried to be in this energy, right? When you were in your power, perhaps there was a heartbreak or a hurt or a wounding that was associated with that energy, right? And it's kind of like maybe that prevented you from being in this space, right? Something like that. Because it's also kind of like what the cards that are coming out here next. You have here the Page of Wands and the High Priestess, which is so fascinating to me, because the High Priestess talks about sort of like intuition and being able to navigate your own emotional energy is kind of what's coming through with this card. Being able to navigate with confidence your own emotional energy. And so there's something here about the Page of Wands. I always see this card as like, look closer. There's something like about details that's really important here. Because with this card here, the High Priestess, I was drawn to this necklace where it was looking to me like in The Little Mermaid, in the most recent movie, or just like the Disney movie, the necklace sort of represents sort of like stolen gifts, right? A gift that was stolen, specifically the Little Mermaid's voice, right? Which is so interesting because these two cards are coming out. You have the Life card, Breath, and the Speak Your Word voice, which is kind of like perhaps there was somebody here for you, Gemini, right? Because these cards are coming out, which are telling me that maybe there is something about like, so to speak, a silencing with this Three of Swords. Like that could have been the heartbreak where it was like, your gifts were silenced in some way, or were actually taken from you, or were used against you, or something like that. But it's kind of like there is a situation here, or it's kind of like the past energy is coming back in order for you to reclaim that gift, or to clear out the wounding that might be associated with that gift, if that makes sense, right? Like because in the Little Mermaid story, she gave up her gift of her voice in order to heal this heartbreak, right? Like it felt like, anyways, it doesn't matter. I feel like that's not so much associated here. It's just kind of like, maybe you are experiencing some sort of overwhelm of like a past story of yours, right? Like, or like feeling overwhelmed by your emotional stories. Kind of, I'm not phrasing that properly. One second. Okay, so you may be experiencing like a past energy that's coming back for whatever reason. And it's kind of like there may be overwhelm associated with that story, because it's kind of like it was difficult, it was heartbreaking. There's a lot of emotions involved in this. And then with the Page of Wands, it's saying to look closer at it. Don't shy away from it, because there's absolutely some form of clarity that's coming in for you, right? And it's kind of like either clearing this once and for all, or like getting your gift back is kind of how it's coming through with the speak your word, right? It's kind of like this gift was misattributed to somebody else, maybe, right? Or like maybe somebody took credit for your work, or like didn't give you credit for your work, maybe something like that. But it's like, it's now that's being returned to you is what's coming through here. And you also have here the God of Stars, which is kind of like a Queen of Swords energy in this deck, which is talking about clarity, right? So I feel like so much clarity coming in for you, Gemini, which is really lovely. But it's kind of like, in order to gain that clarity, you have to look back at the past and clear some sort of wounding that is associated with a specific gift, is kind of how it's coming through for you. Right? So it doesn't have to be your voice, though, of course, because this is a Gemini reading, right? Like clarity. It's coming through as like stories, perhaps notes, right? Perhaps some sort of intellectual property, or intellectual or mind-based or thought-based, or something like that. Something that you created out of like from your own thoughts is being credited to you now, right? That's kind of what's coming through. It's like you're able to speak now because something is being returned to you that perhaps had been misappropriated by somebody else or something like that. Anyways, and then we have here the Five of Swords, because I feel like there's kind of like, it's like there's an energy here. It's coming through as like a ghost energy, which to me just talks about like past attachments, because it might even be something like with this Three of Swords that this wounding might not even be yours in some way, which is really interesting. I don't know if that's true. It's kind of like maybe this wounding is not even yours. It may be even somebody who's close to you, or it's like somebody who gave you a gift, but there was wounding associated with it, and somehow that became yours. Or it's kind of coming through as like generational trauma, right? Like that's interesting. Like a generational gift, so to speak, that's been passed down, but in the process it also passes down this sort of heartbreak at the same time, because sometimes gifts can also be weaknesses, right? Like blessings and weaknesses, strengths and weaknesses sometimes are, not sometimes, almost all the time are very interlinked, right? So there may be something about that, is like being able to identify the weakness or the heartbreak or the pain and somehow heal it so that it's not passed down again, or that it's not like, I feel like very much that something is being corrected here with the Page of Wands. I always see this as being like looking closer. It's like maybe there was something that you weren't seeing about this situation that was either like, it could have been incorrect, right? It's kind of looking to me like, now that this Five of Swords might be talking about like when you're in sort of a wounded state. When you're in a wounded state, sometimes that becomes the filter with which you see everything. Is kind of what's coming through here. So it could be something like that, where it's like a past situation where you were hurt or wounded is coming back around in order to clear that wounding or to gain a new perspective on it, perhaps, because there's a similar situation that's sort of coming back around, or that feels similar or has like a similar undercurrent to it, where it's like there are two ways in which you can see it. If you're looking at it through this lens of wounding, that cycle is going to repeat, is kind of how it's coming through, right? It's like that sort of wounding energy will repeat. But if you look at it with sort of like perhaps a different lens, or with a more playful lens, perhaps with the Page of Wands, looking closer at something, or looking at the details of it, or something that it just feels more playful with the Page of Wands, and with the speaking your voice, or speaking your word. Perhaps just speaking about it might be helpful, or finding new ways in which you can express yourself maybe might be helpful as well. Trying something new, perhaps, with the Page of Wands, because this one also talks about exploration and creativity. So there may be something about, like, it doesn't have to be your voice, right? It's just talking about expression, a creative expression of some sort that perhaps is different from what you've been doing. Might be helpful to, like, bring life back into a situation, perhaps. Okay, Gemini, I hope that was helpful. I'm going to leave it there. If you're interested in a personal reading, you can find my website in the description box below. If this message resonated with you, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me. It really helps a lot, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.